is CNN.
Devastation. I know that many of you did not...
A live picture of the battle for control of the Russian parliament. The words now of President Boris Yeltsin on Russian television.
Alarming. This tragic night has taught us many things. We had not been getting ready to make war. We had been hoping that it was possible to make a deal and preserve peace in this capital. And those who began to fight against this peaceful city and unleashed this massacre and bloodbath are criminals. But this is not just a crime committed by individual gangsters or bandits. Everything that has happened and is still happening in Moscow is a pre-planned armed coup d'etat, which was organized by communist revenge seekers, fascist ringleaders, a number of the former deputies and representatives of the councils of people's deputies. Under the disguise of negotiations, they were collecting their forces. They had been recruiting people in their detachments from among criminals. It was just a group of political intriguers, and with arms in hand, they've tried to impose their will on the rest of this country. The means which they were planning to use to rule this country have been shown for the whole world to see. These are cynical lies and briberies. These are stones, these are sharpened rods, submachine guns and machine guns. Those who are wielding the banners in the streets of Moscow have once again stained Russia in blood. They were hoping that they would manage a surprise attack. They were hoping that their impunity and their unprecedented cruelty would take everyone by surprise. They were hoping that the servicemen would stand aside and would be looking on as the defenseless Muscovites were being dealt short shrift with, and how a bloody dictatorship is being installed in this country. They were hoping that the citizens of Russia would believe in their lies. They were hoping that their victory would come soon. Now they have miscalculated, and the people will damn the criminals. Them, they and those who were giving orders to them will never be forgiven, because they have put in jeopardy their own people, Moscow, Russia, women, children, and senior citizens. This armed rebellion is doomed. To restore peace, law and order, and calm troops are being pulled in Moscow. Their objective is to liberate the premises that have been seized by the criminal elements, to disarm the illegal armed formations and neutralize them. I'm asking you, distinguished Muscovites, to give your moral support to the Russian officers and soldiers. They are members of our army and the police. Their only objective as of today is to give protection to our children, to our fathers and mothers, to stop and neutralize the murderers and gangsters. Moscow, Russia as well are expecting you to be courageous and resolved. Public groups that were instrumental in the mass-scale disturbances and other illegal activities are hereby being banned across the territory of the Russian Federation. The Central Bank of the Russian Federation has been instructed to immediately stop all transactions involving the accounts of such public groups. The Prosecutor's General Office has been instructed to immediately start criminal proceedings and start the investigation concerning the fact of organizing mass-scale disturbances. A decree providing for these and other measures was signed last night and is already being implemented. I'm hereby addressing all political forces in the Russian Federation for the sake of those whose life has already been cut short, for the sake of those whose innocent blood has already been shed, I'm begging you, forget things that only yesterday may have seemed important to you. That is internal frictions and differences. Everybody who cherishes peace and calm, everybody who holds dear the honor and dignity of this country, everybody who's against war should now come together and be united. I'm addressing the leaders of the regions of Russia, the leaders of the territories, autonomous entities, republics, and all other administrative entities. Isn't it that the blood that has been shed so far is not sufficient for all of us to understand things for what they are and adopt a clear-cut position based on the principles of the unity of Russia? I'm addressing the citizens of Russia. The armed fascist rebellion in Moscow will be suppressed within the shortest time possible. This country has the wherewithal to do that. I consider it my duty to speak to the Muscovites as well. Over the last 24 hours, there have been deaths in this city. Innocent civilians have fallen victim to the gangsters. Let us pay our tribute to the deceased. At the call of your heart, many of you took to the streets and spent the night in the downtown of Moscow, close to the Kremlin and at a distance from the Kremlin. Dozens of thousands of people were putting their lives at risk. Your civil courage, your will of spirit have been the most effective weapon to contain the criminals. I respect you so much.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin speaking in a pre-taped address to the Russian people, shown as we were watching it for the first time on Russian television. The armed fascist rebellion in Moscow will be suppressed, he said.
Jonathan, as the president began speaking, these T-72 battle tanks that were on Kutuzovsky Prospect moved forward. Two of them sitting on the bridge over the Moscow River. The other 7 have moved down to the riverside. They have taken up positions across the Moscow River with their cannons aimed right at the Russian White House.
Alexander Rutskoy and Ruslan Hasbulatov both could have heard Mr. Yeltsin's address, where he appealed to them not to shed any more innocent blood and to lay down their arms. Mr. Rutskoy had both channels of Russian television on in his office at all times. We saw that throughout this 11-day crisis.
Tell us what we're seeing, Eileen, Steve. We had seen in the last 2 hours armor approach the White House. We've heard a great deal of gunfire. We did see a few troops advancing on the building. Is the assault moving forward from there?
Very, very methodically it's moving forward. It's moved in about 4 stages now. First of all, we saw a number of APCs, armored personnel carriers, drive into the back of the White House a couple of hours ago. That was followed on by these tanks that moved up Kutuzovsky Prospect, but stopped about a mile short of the White House. They have now moved up. That was the 4th step. And in between the 2nd and 4th, assault troops have moved out of the Mir Hotel across the street, the east end of the White House, and are moving on the building. We saw some pictures earlier of some pieces of the Russian White House crumbling away, having been hit by shell fire of some sort.
We were led to expect, I believe, by officials in Moscow that there would be some kind of airborne assault on the building. Any sight of that now?
None yet, but I think we should add at this point that we're talking about what the Russian army calls desantniki, which those are paratroopers, but they needn't necessarily come in by air. They could be on the ground. These are crack troops, commando troops who could do that. The picture you see now, we saw gunfire coming out of those windows.
Many of the windows had been prepared and covered up by blinds and newspapers, clearly preparing holes from which to shoot from.
If If you're just joining us, this is the battle for the Russian White House, the legislature where hardline lawmakers have held out against President Boris Yeltsin's decree dissolving the legislature, and since then, pleas asking them to surrender. They have not surrendered. They are now barricaded inside their building and facing an assault by the Russian army that is now getting underway.
Seeing a picture right now of two T-72 battle tanks that have pulled onto the bridge over the Moscow River. 7 other of those tanks have gone off to the left of this picture, taking up positions with their cannons pointed right at the Russian White House across the river, clearly within easy range. We have seen no fire from those tanks yet. Those tanks began moving into their present positions exactly as Boris Yeltsin began to speak.
Boris Yeltsin apparently apologetic, it would seem, about his earlier statements that there would be no bloodshed in this dispute. He told Russians, "We had not been getting ready to make war. We had tried to preserve the peace in this capital." As we are seeing in this live picture from Moscow, there is no peace in the capital right now. In the heart of a residential area, the legislature is under a very fierce attack. It's a city of 9 million people. Most of them, of course, are very far away from the action that's unfolding now, but this is a historic and very significant place in that city. It is the seat of the legislature, now being attacked by Russian troops.
And lest anyone doubt that this is a full-fledged attack on the White House, Jonathan, there are dozens of armored vehicles ranged around the White House. And going back to your statement about Boris Yeltsin sounding apologetic, he has spent now 14 days having not shot from his side in anger. Okay, we can see men going into the Russian White House now. Apparently assault troops. Pictures are brought to you.
Now again, what they find inside will be heavily fortified corridors and rooms. Men inside had assault rifles and had automatic rifles, and they were hiding behind safes and barricades that they had constructed. They also have a lot of food supplies in there, a lot of ammunition supplies.
They have women and children and prisoners as well, according to some reports.
There's certainly women and children, Jonathan. The women and children were part of the demonstrators, and they probably went inside when some of the shooting started. I've spoken to numerous elderly people, men and women, and there was one small child, a 4-year-old girl named Natasha, whose grandmother, both of her grandmothers, had taken her there, and she was there throughout those 14 days. She was sleeping outside with them under a makeshift shelter. Can only wonder where she is right now.
Picture of a T-72 battle tank with its cannon and machine gun, both pointed towards the White House. We haven't seen it fire yet.
From all of this gunfire, I'm wondering why we aren't seeing more damage to the building.
Well, we did, in fact, see some damage to the building when it was heavily hit. A lot of this gunfire, as we've said, is going on around this bunker, which is behind the Russian White House and covered and obscured by trees. It's a lower building, and so therefore, in the earlier assault, certainly that was what was being hit.
Jonathan, I will also suggest that mostly what we have heard has been small arms fire, punctuated by heavier fire. It's not clear who's shooting what from our vantage point, but I have a feeling that there's a lot of exchange of gunfire from the Russian side, the Yeltsin side, shooting at windows where, no doubt, the Ruskoy people are firing back.
I suppose we should be looking for smoke or gas to emerge from those windows. That seems to me something they might want to do at this point. Put gas down to try and empty the building out.
Wouldn't be surprised if we see some gas. I don't know if these people are close enough yet with gas to use it. All we have seen are Yeltsin assault troops running crouched toward the building. We saw a few people who apparently have entered the building or at least are on the outside of it.
The men inside, the deputies and the defenders of the White House, have gas masks. They actually distributed some to us when we were there overnight a couple of times when they thought an attack was imminent. They do all have gas masks. inside the White House. Although, if there's more demonstrators inside, I'm not sure how many of them have gas masks.
Now, they did pledge to stay and fight, those we heard from them, but is there a way out of the building that we might not see, that the soldiers might not see? Are there means of escape?
There are tunnels under this building that probably lead elsewhere, but they have been completely blocked off for several days now by the Yeltsin forces.
We were told that there was a tunnel from underneath the bunker, that lower building, which isn't, I mean, normally is not a bunker, it's an administrative office behind the Russian White House, but which the defenders of the White House had pretty much encamped themselves in and had most of their ammunition. We were told that there was, in fact, a passageway between that building and the Russian White House. Although most of the time when we saw transfers of weapons, it was overground across Freedom Square.
There you can see more of the armor in front of the Ukraine Hotel across the Moscow River from the White House. Bizarre to see people strolling around here on the streets of Moscow. And that is a position where assault troops, Yeltsin assault troops, have been coming from the hotel mirror to the left into this barricade area, and from there have been storming it. Bystanders who have joined us up here on the roof of CNN Bureau. Got people across Kutuzovsky also crouched behind a billboard watching this all go on. A lot of people have been peering out of windows in buildings that we can see, trying to get a view of what's happening. Obviously, if you're anywhere within a couple of miles of the White House, you can't miss very serious fighting that's been going on now for 2+ hours.
And there are a great many people who do, in fact, live that close to this action. I've said it before, but it's striking to me. This is a residential area. There are apartment buildings all up and down this street. There are a lot of people now who are sitting and probably cowering in their apartments, listening to this going on within range of their homes.
Indeed, they probably are, Jonathan.
And that's correct. On the left side of the White House is obscured by the Ukraine Hotel, but across the Naberezhnaya, there are apartment buildings literally just one street's width away from the Russian White House.
The ongoing battle for the Russian White House and for Freedom Square. An assault on the legislature is expected sometime soon. We will be back for it as our continuing coverage of the crisis in Russia returns. Russian against Russian, soldiers fighting soldiers, armed lawmakers, politicians, armed civilians in Moscow at this hour. Our continuing coverage of the crisis in Moscow takes us to this street scene, a street scene that is a scene of battle, as Russian soldiers assault the renegade White House, the Parliament of Russia that is holding out against President Boris Yeltsin. It is holding out also now against armor and assault troops of the Russian army. CNN's Steve Hurst, our Moscow bureau chief, he is in Moscow, as is Eileen O'Connor, and they are watching this drama unfold with us.
Indeed, we see a lot of smoke from that camera angle.
This is behind the Russian White House. This is the balcony from which we had taken many of our pictures. That smoke is billowing out from where we had our live position and all that.